During the first days of summer, in a wealthy neighborhood of the capital Bucharest, there was a traffic jam in which the main protagonists were an old ambulance and a sports car. The incident would have ended if the driver had given way to the emergency vehicle, but it was not so. Soon, the unimaginable would happen. It all started in July 2010. An ambulance was leaving at full speed, the sirens were blaring, and suddenly the paramedics drove through a wealthy neighborhood of the city where people did not mind parking their vehicles on the streets, even though they had their parking lots. They parked in gardens, sidewalks, and if necessary, even in playgrounds and churches. They built fences blocking the roads or left a reduced space for transit. The ambulance driver managed to get to his destination. However, he would soon find himself in a complicated situation, and the road became narrower and more extended. In front of him, a car was approaching. The ambulance driver honked the horn and raised the volume of sirens so that the car would not continue advancing. Finally, both were face to face. The driver got out of the ambulance to politely ask the people in the car to give him the pass, so he approached and touched the dark windows. Suddenly, the glass slowly descended from the car door. He could feel the smell of solid drinks mixed with a cloud of thick and harmful smoke. It was the evidence of endless parties of the so-called modest students of a prestigious university that instead of preparing for tomorrow's exam, were rushing to a discotheque. But now an ambulance was blocking their way. The last straw was that the sports car was in the emergency lane, as other cars were blocking the oncoming road. Finally, the windows were fully opened, and two young men could be seen, both wearing excellent watches, glasses, and branded caps. The driver exclaimed, "Get out of our way! Can't you see that you blocked the lane? Do you want to hit us and touch my car with your filthy hands? Why did you hit the windows? Do you know how much this sports car costs?" The ambulance driver remained calm. "Guys, sorry for the inconvenience, but could you back up just a couple of meters? There's enough room over there to let us through. Would you do us a favor?" "Why don't you guys back up?" said the other young man. "We'd love to, but the ambulance is old and the reverse gear doesn't work properly. You have a big car, it's just a few meters back." Of course, the ambulance driver knew that it would be challenging to maneuver backward, as the narrow road was full of cars for several hundred meters, and of course it was not a good option. The driver was beginning to lose his patience, and suddenly the ambulance paramedic came out and told them, "Guys, there is a woman over 70 years old waiting for us. She is earnest. Her life depends on us. She is a few houses away from here." At these words, the boys looked at each other. They seemed to have understood the seriousness of the matter, but one of them uttered, "Why should we care about that old woman? If you want to save her, you'll have to manage." Knowing there was no other option, the paramedic decided to walk to the patient, taking her suitcase and hurried to the house. The driver stayed to try to fix the problem, but 5 minutes later his phone rang. It was the paramedic. The old lady was in severe condition. He told him to grab a stretcher and sprint to him. The driver hoped that the young people would become aware of this, but nothing, so he had no choice but to run with the stretcher. 10 minutes later, the driver and the paramedic were taking the old lady to the ambulance. The young people felt that the entertainment was ending, but soon they saw in the distance how the paramedic and driver were transferring the patient. This could probably force anyone to change their mind, but it was not like that. That seemed to amuse them even more. They did not know that their laughter would end soon. 2 days before, Maria Dragomir, a 75-year-old woman, was leaving the house she bought 2 decades ago after her son and daughter-in-law died. It turns out that the couple went on a business trip. Unfortunately, they suffered a car accident that ended their lives, leaving behind 2 little ones, 3 and 5 years old. The elderly woman had to take care of her grandchildren as there were no other relatives. Unfortunately, the daughter-in-law grew up in an orphanage, and Maria's husband died soon after. The woman inherited a lot of money from her husband, and she managed to increase that fortune significantly in the following years. She worked hard to give her grandchildren a better future, although more than once, neighbors complained about their behavior, telling her that they spent the money on vices in the beginning. The grandmother did not accept the truth, but she realized that the boys did not love her, and all they did was demand money for their vices. At this age, she was tired, and now she did not know whether to let her grandchildren inherit her business, for she found something much worse. Her friend, a lonely old neighbor, told her that her grandchildren were having fun, humiliating and not letting in people of low income. That seemed to her something very pitiful. Could her grandchildren, whom she adored, be so inhuman? Returning to the subject, as the woman left the house, a sudden thought came to her as she passed the ambulance station. Smiling, she entered and went straight to the person in charge of the place, the doctor, Adrian Badia. He greeted the old woman warmly. They knew each other when the woman was sick and became good friends. "Ma'am, it's been a long time." "Doctor, I need your help in a delicate matter." For a long time, the woman explained all the details. In the end, the doctor concurred. "As soon as you need an ambulance, call immediately." That's how the two said goodbye. During the weekend, Maria was coming home from shopping. She soon went to her bedroom, but from there she saw her grandson coming out, and he looked at her in surprise and said, "I was looking for you, Grandma dear. Daniel and I have to pay our monthly college tuition." The money was not for that, because recently, a staff of the university called her to inform them that her grandchildren owed money to the establishment and that they were not attending classes. The old woman knew that her grandson was lying to her. She refused to give them what they asked for, despite noticing the old woman drooping without a twinge of conscience. The grandson became furious and started shouting at her. "You are a bad person who does not want to support her grandchildren. You're cruel." It was a pity for the lady to hear these words. She knew this was not true. She regularly gave her grandchildren impressive sums of money, bought them a new car, and paid for their college. In return, she did not even receive thanks. For the last time, the grandson asked, "Are you going to give money, yes or no?" With tears in her eyes, the grandmother refused her grandson. He ran out of there, slamming the door behind him. Maria, who was feeling sick, dialed the number left by her doctor friend. After that, the old woman entered her room, wanting to know why her grandson was there. Was he looking for money? She soon noticed that the lock on her closet was open and realized what had happened. She had jewelry inside a box stored among her clothes, the only memento she had left of her mother, and now it was gone. Crying, the old woman thought about how her grandson was able to steal something so valuable from her. Meanwhile, as agreed, the paramedic arrived at her house, explaining, "Yes, Maria, it was just as they told you. No matter how you beg, they won't let someone in. They are completely indifferent to someone else's problems, and it even seemed like they would celebrate if something happened to you soon." "We will soon find out," replied the old woman. Soon after she was taken to the ambulance, the young men saw the men carrying someone on the stretcher from afar. "What if it were our grandmother?" asked Daniel Marion. "Nothing. The truth is that it would be good for the old woman to pass to the next world." It seemed that the brothers were fed up with her. Suddenly, the paramedic and the driver arrived and talked to each other. "Poor thing, we arrived too late. Her heart failed." "Driver, she needs to be taken to the morgue." As the paramedic spoke, the curious brothers got out of the car to see for themselves. As they leaned out and looked inside the ambulance, they saw their grandmother lying with her eyes closed. "Daniel, it's our grandmother!" "Really? Let's see," he said in surprise. "Well, there's no choice but to organize a funeral. After all, the old woman was only bringing headaches. At last, we won't worry about money anymore," they spoke aloud. But great was the surprise when Grandma opened her eyes, got up from the stretcher, and said mockingly, "Dear grandchildren, you didn't really expect it, but I'm back. It's too boring in the other world." With these words, she left the ambulance. Seeing her grandson's shirt pocket, Maria reached in, pulled out her mother's jewelry, and then walked. The boys were shocked. The driver and the paramedics started laughing and were congratulated by the old woman on doing a good performance. Of course, the woman was heartbroken. After a while, everyone left. Now there lay two lonely young men sitting on the sidewalk. The sun was setting and there was no one around. From that moment on, a completely different life began for them. From rich boys became simple laborers who had to earn their living with their own hands, for the grandmother decided to give all her money to charity. She closed the business and now only lived on her pension. Besides, she spent more time with the lonely old man, and they had fun with what little they had. Finally, this was much better than being the grandmother of some interested grandchildren, without a doubt a regrettable story. It seems that there will always be children and grandchildren who take advantage, and this lesson is an example to rethink that if we have the support of our parents or grandparents, it does not mean that we are above them or people. We must be grateful for the little or how much we can give ourselves, and we should never make fun of the neediest. We never know what the future holds. I hope this video has helped you. Thank you very much for watching. By the way, I invite you to subscribe to this channel if you are not already, and activate the notification bell to receive the latest uploads. See you next time!